Hey, welcome back, guys. All right, today we are going to talk about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So we just got done talking about the Constitution and what the framers had to go through to create the document, all the debates, the compromises going on for months and months in the summer heat, meeting in secrecy, all that stuff. Well, now they made the document, so we divided the document up, talked about Articles 1, 2, and 3, separation of powers and checks and balances, and then federalism for Articles 4, 5, and 6. But now as we move forward, we created the document. The framers created the document. Now we got to get it approved. We need the states to ratify this document to make it the official law of the land. So, Article 7, as we talked about before, you saw in the last video, you needed 9 out of 13 states to say, hey, this is going to be the document that's going to rule us. And this is going to come with, a fight. And it's not going to be an easy fight. So you're still going to have people that are very reluctant to understand how much power the government should have. So, there's still kind of the hangover from the abuse of the king. The Articles of Confederation was like, this isn't enough power. But still, there were people that wanted the states to have more power than the federal government. They were, not willing to give up a lot of power in return to get that protection or whatnot, like John Locke said. So there were people that supported this Constitution, this document, right off the rip, and these were called the Federalists. Right? So the Federalists, they wanted the strong central government. And who were the Federalists? The Federalists were your wealthy, upper class people, your merchants, usually lived in the cities, large landowners, plantation owners. So they were the ones that wanted this government to happen. They supported it. Their job was to push for it. And then the people that were against it, these are the Anti-Federalists, right? So they wanted more power to lie in the states. The Anti-Federalists were more of your lower class citizens. So you're more of your blacksmiths, your small landowners, the lower class in essence. The Federalists were more of your elitists. The Anti-Federalists were more of the people that believed in having more of a representative democracy. So more of a pure or direct democracy. So that's what they were debating over. Like, how much power should the federal government have? So, and this was a fight over the ratification of the Constitution, and it wasn't an easy one. So the Federalists had to go and try to convince the Anti-Federalists to approve this document, right? So what did they do? The main form of communication, how are they going to get their message out, was through the newspaper. They didn't have Twitter. They didn't have Facebook. They didn't have Snappy Chat or things like that. The way they communicated back and forth was through the newspaper. So the Federalists would create what we call the Federalist Papers. And these are some of the documents that we're going to have to delve into later on. These Federalist Papers were a collection of 85 articles written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. And they used the pen name of Pluvius. Right? They didn't want people to know who they were. They didn't want people to attack them or attack their character in the paper. Their whole goal was to push the Constitution to get that supported. So if people knew who was writing this, they figured they would be under attack. And, they didn't want to be harassed. They didn't want their families to be harassed. So therefore, it was like, let's use a code name, a pen name of Pluvius. So these articles are going in the paper, and of course the Anti-Federalists are writing back, and they're going to use pen names. So like Thomas Jefferson was an Anti-Federalist, and they used the name of Brutus or Cato in their papers. So they're going back and forth in the newspapers, and so we're going to look at, later on, we're going to look at Federalist 51 and Brutus 1, and dealing with the ratification of the Constitution, and other issues as well. So as this debate goes on, ratification, what is needed? We need 9 of the 13 states to approve the document. So 9 states did ratify it by June 21st, 1788. But it wasn't going to be truly official until both Virginia and New York ratified this Constitution, because both of these states had very large populations, and um, and once they had those big states ratify it, it made things so much easier. So as you can see, the Constitution is going to be finished. They're going to stop writing it on September 17th of 1787. That's why we have Constitution Day. But once this thing gets kicked to the states and the states start voting on it, the Federalist Papers start to be written to get people to support it. So you can see Delaware ratified it first, Pennsylvania second, pretty quickly in December. It was like bang, bang, bang. Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Then, we took some time off for the holiday. Then we have Georgia, then Connecticut, then Massachusetts. And then you start to see the time kind of like whittle longer and longer away. And Virginia did not ratify it until June 25th, 1788, and that made it the ninth one. And you can see it won by a narrow margin, only 10 votes. And then in New York, it only won by 3 votes the next day. So pretty much once Virginia had it, boom, that it was official. Then New York, that definitely made it official. Then we don't wait till November for North Carolina. And then, hey, Rhode Island decidedly finds to join the party in 1790, right? So poor Rhode Island. And they barely cleared it by 2 votes. So great debates were held in both Virginia and New York in ratifying the Constitution. But the Bill of Rights was the crucial compromise to ratification. So why the Bill of Rights? What made the Bill of Rights so special? And it was the simple fact that the Bill of Rights were actually the liberties written down. The Anti-Federalists, again, very skeptic of the federal government, and they said, hey, we want our rights written down. Why? The king never wrote down their rights. There were no rights really written down under the Articles of Confederation. So if you write them down, that way the government cannot take them from you. So they say, hey, if you add a Bill of Rights, right, freedom of speech, what are our freedoms? We'll put them down. All right, put them down in the first 10 amendments, and then we'll ratify it. And that's what they did. So when this debate, who really won? Both sides won. The Anti-Federalists won because they got their rights written down. The Federalists won because the document got approved. Obviously, it's been around for 240 plus years. Boom, right? But as you can see, the debate took a while. Arguments went on in the newspapers, and that's what we're going to look at. So you see the Federalists, I say, we need a new constitution. And then you have the Anti-Federalists, no, let's amend the Articles of Confederation. So, it's just a silly cartoon. But we are going to look at Federalist 51 and Brutus 1. So, a little for and against the ratification of the Constitution, like I said. But as we further delve in and we finish out Chapter 2, we got to talk about the Constitution itself. How can we informally change the Constitution? Well, there's multiple ways. Judicial interpretation. So, the way the courts will rule on certain cases, it can change the laws and interpretation of certain things. So, for instance, when we get into federalism, when we talk about like, hey, it's up to the states to issue marriage license, hunting license, driver's license, things like that. But the Supreme Court can change some of this. So, like if you go back to 2016 with the Obergefell v. Hodges case, which happened where the federal government said, hey, states cannot deny same-sex couples marriage license. That's a huge impact. That's an informal way of changing the Constitution, the way we interpret these court cases and how the rulings of these court cases, changing the political practices. That's how an informal process can change. Technology can change Constitution. With time, as technology changes dramatically, our laws and rules can't keep up with it. By the time we make laws in our slow democratic process, by the time we make the laws, technology's already changed so much. So it's like the laws are almost obsolete by the time they get there. It's hard for policymakers to keep up with the current change in technology. And, there's increased demands put on policymakers. Again, all that is an informal way to change. So we look at the Constitution and democracy. The Constitution itself is rarely described as democratic. But as time has gone on, it has become more and more democratic. So there's been a gradual democratization of the Constitution. So the Constitution, the scope of government, much of the Constitution limits the government. again, we'll get into that later, especially when we talk about civil rights and civil liberties. The Constitution reinforces individualism, but yet encourages hyperpluralism. So that is chapter 2, and that's the finish. And like I said, we're going to jump to Federalist 51 and Brutus 1 and look at those documents. So hopefully you guys are having a great day. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will talk to you later.